Nell Fletcher did not wake up at 55 planning to start a fight. She did not want drama. She did not want attention. What she wanted was peace. For a long time, she believed peace would come once she walked away from Chris and closed that painful chapter of her life. She believed that once the marriage ended, the worst was behind her. The lies had already come out. The betrayal had already broken her heart. She thought she had survived rock bottom. But what Nell learned, slowly and painfully, was that some endings do not bring peace right away. Some endings only reveal how much damage is still waiting to be dealt with. For years, Nell had been the woman who held everything together. She was steady, she was calm, she was reliable, the kind of person people leaned on without even realizing it. When she married Chris, she truly believed they were building something solid. Their life looked stable from the outside. A shared home, shared plans, shared memories. Friends saw them as a couple that worked. Family trusted that they were fine. Nell trusted that they were fine too, at least for a long time. But over time, things began to feel off. Not in loud ways, not in ways that caused scenes. It was subtle. Chris became distant. Conversations lost warmth. Laughter faded. He started guarding his phone, turning the screen away, ending messages quickly when Nell entered the room. She noticed the changes, but like many people who love deeply, she explained them away. She blamed stress. She blamed work. She blamed time. She told herself patience was part of love, and so she waited. Nell waited through missed moments. She waited through excuses. She waited through a growing feeling in her chest that something was wrong. She supported Chris through his plans, his goals, his ideas. She smiled at family gatherings even when she felt lonely standing right next to her own husband. She carried the emotional weight quietly because that was who she had always been, the one who kept things calm. When the truth finally came out, it was heavier than Nell expected. It was not just emotional betrayal. It was deeper than that. There were lies tied to money, decisions made without her knowledge, papers she had never seen, choices that affected their shared life in ways she never agreed to. The man she trusted had been living another version of reality while she was still legally and financially connected to him. Leaving the marriage was painful, but Nell believed it was necessary. She thought that once she walked away, the chapter would close. She thought distance would protect her. She thought silence would bring peace. So she stayed quiet. She did not tell her story loudly. She did not attack Chris publicly. She did not explain herself to everyone. People around her praised her for being strong, for taking the high road. What they did not see was how tired she was. At 55, Nell was not trying to start over with chaos. She wanted calm. She wanted stability. She wanted a chance to rebuild without fighting. But walking away did not end the problems. Bills kept coming. Financial issues surfaced with her name attached. Legal responsibilities appeared that she had never agreed to. Even though Chris had moved on publicly and emotionally, their lives were still tied together on paper. And every new problem felt like another reminder that he still had power over her life. At first, Nell tried to handle it quietly. She paid what she could. She asked questions politely. She hoped things would settle with time. But time did not fix anything. Instead, it revealed how unfair the situation had become. She realized she was the only one dealing with the consequences of decisions she did not make. The weight became too heavy to ignore. The shift did not happen all at once. It came in small moments. A night where she could not sleep. A bank statement that made her hand shake. A conversation where she finally admitted out loud that this was not fair. Then came a meeting with a lawyer, someone who listened to her story without judgment and said something simple but powerful. She was told she did not have to carry this alone. She was told she had options. That was the moment Nell stopped asking how to keep the peace and started asking why she was the only one paying the price. That question changed everything. Sending a legal notice was not about anger. It was not about revenge. It was about drawing a boundary that should have been drawn years earlier. It was about saying clearly that she would no longer clean up a mess she did not create. Chris did not expect it. In his mind, Nell was still the quiet one, the understanding one, the woman who avoided conflict. He believed time would make the past disappear. He believed silence meant acceptance. What he did not realize was that silence had been costing Nell more than he ever knew. The day Nell sent the legal notice, there was no panic. There were no tears. She sat at her kitchen table, the same place where she once shared meals and morning coffee with Chris. She signed the papers calmly. Her hands were steady. There was no doubt in her mind. For the first time in a long time, she felt clear. The legal notice was not just a document. It was a message. It said that her time mattered, her name mattered, her life mattered. It forced Chris to face something he had avoided: accountability. The past he thought was buried was now standing in front of him in official words that could not be ignored. For Nell, the moment was emotional, but not in the way people might expect. She did not miss him. She did not question herself. What she felt was the weight of realizing how much she had carried alone for so long. The betrayal hurt, but the silence afterward hurt even more. And now that silence was broken. This step changed how Nell saw herself. For years, she believed strength meant enduring, staying calm, holding everything together no matter the cost. Now she understood that strength can also mean speaking up. It can mean confrontation. It can mean setting boundaries even when your voice feels small. People around her noticed the change. Her posture was different. The way she spoke was different. She no longer apologized for taking up space. She no longer explained herself to people who were not listening. At 55, Nell was no longer shrinking. The impact of her decision reached beyond her own life. Other women began reaching out quietly. Women her age, women who felt stuck, women who believed it was too late to start over. Nell's story showed them something different. It showed that it is never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to demand fairness, never too late to choose yourself. This was not just about Chris. It was about every version of Nell that stayed silent before. The young woman who ignored warning signs, the wife who covered pain with smiles, the person who believed love meant endless sacrifice. Sending the legal notice was her way of telling all those versions that they deserved better. What made this moment powerful was the way she handled it. There was no public attack, no angry speeches, no chaos, just calm certainty, the kind that comes from surviving heartbreak and realizing you are still standing. At 55, Nell Fletcher did not look like someone starting a battle. She looked like someone finishing one. The story people thought ended with a broken marriage turned into something stronger, a woman who finally chose herself without fear or guilt. Life after betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like paperwork on a table, a pen in steady hands, a quiet decision that changes everything. Nell's journey reminds us that closure is not something someone else gives you. It is something you claim. Her life is not perfect now. Healing is still ongoing. Trust is still fragile, but she has something she did not have before: control over her own story. And that may be the most important victory of all, because in the end, the strongest response is not drama. It is dignity. It is boundaries. It is moving forward while the past finally answers for itself. And Nell Fletcher is no longer just surviving. She is reclaiming her life on her own terms. As Nell moved forward, she began to understand something important about healing. Healing does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending the pain never happened. It means choosing not to live under the weight of it anymore. For a long time, Nell had been carrying memories, responsibilities, and emotional damage that did not belong to her alone. Sending that legal notice was the first time she truly put some of that weight down. There were days after the notice was sent when doubt tried to creep in, not because she believed she was wrong, but because standing up for yourself after years of silence feels unfamiliar. When you spend most of your life keeping things smooth, choosing yourself can feel uncomfortable at first. But every time doubt appeared, Nell reminded herself why she took that step. She reminded herself of the sleepless nights, the confusion, the feeling of being trapped in a situation she did not create. What Nell did next was quiet but powerful. She stopped explaining herself. She stopped giving long answers to people who questioned her choices. She stopped feeling responsible for how others reacted to her boundaries. This was new for her, and it was freeing. She realized that not everyone needed to understand her decisions for them to be valid. Chris, on the other hand, was forced into a position he had avoided for years. He could no longer ignore the situation. He could no longer pretend everything had worked itself out. The notice demanded attention, accountability, and action. It brought clarity to a situation that had lived in confusion for far too long. For Nell, this was not about winning. It was about fairness. It was about balance. It was about closing a chapter properly instead of letting it bleed into the rest of her life. She wanted clean lines, clear endings, and most of all, peace that did not depend on someone else's behavior. As time passed, Nell began rebuilding her life in small, steady ways. She reorganized her space. She adjusted her routines. She focused on what made her feel calm and grounded. These were not big, dramatic changes. They were quiet ones, but they mattered. Each small choice reminded her that she was in control again. She also began to see how much strength she had gained without realizing it. Surviving betrayal had taught her resilience. Enduring silence had taught her patience. And finally, speaking up taught her courage. Not loud courage, but steady courage, the kind that lasts. People who knew Nell noticed this shift. She laughed more freely. She spoke with more confidence. She no longer carried herself like someone waiting for the next problem to appear. She looked lighter, even though her journey was not over. That difference came from knowing she had finally protected herself. One of the hardest lessons Nell learned was that being kind does not mean allowing harm. For years, she believed that keeping the peace was the right thing to do. She believed that avoiding conflict made her strong. Now she understood that peace without boundaries is not peace at all. It is just silence with a cost. Nell's story began to reach people she never expected. Women who had followed her life quietly saw themselves in her choices. Many of them were dealing with unfinished endings of their own, legal ties, emotional ties, situations they thought they had to accept because of age, fear, or exhaustion. Nell's decision showed them that standing up for yourself does not have an expiration date. At 55, Nell was not chasing revenge. She was choosing clarity. She was choosing fairness. She was choosing herself in a way she had not done before. And that choice created a ripple effect, not just in her own life, but in the lives of others watching from a distance. She also learned that closure does not always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes with action. Sometimes it comes with a document that says what words never did. Sometimes it comes from knowing you did everything you could to protect your future. There were moments when memories surfaced, good ones and painful ones.